everyone. My name is Heather VanCura, and this session is how to grow your career as a developer. And the genesis of this session is over the last 15 or so years, I've worked with the Java developer community, running the Java Community Process Program in some aspect over this time. Oftentimes, new Java developers or even seasoned Java developers will come to me with the question of, how can I grow my career? I don't feel like I'm an expert enough to participate in Java technology standardization or open source efforts. What do I need to do to advance my career and gain this knowledge? So it's a question that comes to me often. So put together this panel of Java experts. You probably know most of these folks that I've assembled for the panel, but to kick off the panel, I'm just gonna have each of my panelists introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what you currently do, and then I'll kick off some of the topics that I have, about 4 topics that we can discuss with the panelists, and then I wanna take questions from the audience. So we have a couple handheld mics here. We'll just go down the row. So we'll start with Heinz. So just, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, I'm Heinz. 1, 2. Yeah, I'm Heinz. I'll make the ketchup.
There's another one there. What? Now you have to. So this panel's about, growing your career as a developer. So what is it that you do that relates to Java development?
Yeah, okay, Java development. I write Java code. I train Java programmers, and I haven't had a job for 20 years almost.
Well, that's what makes you really interesting for this panel. But you might expand on that in terms of,
I
don't really have a job. I don't really have a job. So you don't really have a job because you're an expert and you're self-employed and you make your own schedule. Is that?
I don't think anybody really wants to employ me. I'm not really the type of person that.
Are you sure you're not a comedian?
No, I'm quite serious actually.
Okay.
Can I pass the mic to Mark?
All right, I'll let you just finish what it is that you do.
Okay, so what do I do? I don't work in a normal job because I find it too insecure. Right? Because when you have a job, you've got one customer. And if that customer goes broke or decides to kick you out, you go from 1 to 0 very quickly. Whereas I've got 100 customers, and if one of them goes broke or kicks me out, I've got another 99 that carry on. That's why I haven't had a job for a long time. Okay, Mark?
Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm happy. We're going to get into a little bit more. It's a little mysterious or cryptic, but as we get into the topics, I'm sure you'll learn more about what Heinz means there.
I was under orders from Heather not to take the mic until we'd gotten sufficient information out of Heinz. So I guess it's safe now. But my name is Mark Heckler. I am a developer advocate for Pivotal, Spring developer advocate. So I write code. I always say I combine the 2 things that I like to do best in the world, which is write code and talk. So I get to code and I get to talk about my code, as well as a lot of code from our Spring team and community of committers. So that's kind of what I do now. So.
Hi, my name is Reginette Bruggaten. I am a senior Java developer. That's my day job. Next to it, I help run a Java user group, Dashers, Women in Java, and I do all kinds of stuff for DevOps for Kids. But I'm just employed by somebody, so I don't lose any customers.
Not personally.
All right. My name is Sander Mak. I work with Luminous as a fellow and a software architect, which means I have multiple hats on in the company. So on the one side, I'm responsible for several projects, defining architecture, working with teams to actually implement the software. On the other hand, as a fellow at Luminous, we also believe that it's more than just coding, and it's more than just delivering software to your customers. We also truly believe that sharing what we do is very important. So that's part of the reason why I speak at conferences like JFOL, but others as well. Also a reason I also started a project about 1.5 years ago to write a book about Java 9. Because it really hits our core beliefs about modular development, and so yeah, sort of 1 and 1 is 2, win-win situation there. So besides being a coder, software architect, also really into sharing what we know and what we do.
All right, thanks. We have 2 mics too, so maybe once Sharth's finished introducing himself, that way we don't have to. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharth Chander. I run the Java Enablement and Advocacy program at Oracle. I actually started at Sun in the Java development team back in 1999, a long time ago. Probably you can see my age. But I then transferred out of the Java development team and joined the NetBeans team and was doing IDE development. Then moved on to Java University, writing curricula to create certification programs, which I'm sure all of you are now certified, yes? Then I became a product manager for Java, so to shape its future in terms of what is the next set of features that go into the platform. And then that evolved into this developer relations program, which I've been part of since 2009. And I'm also the chairperson for Java 1, so a plug. If anyone wants to speak at Java 1, let me know. I'm happy to look at your sessions. Thank you for having us.
Okay, well, thank you to the panelists. So I think we have a round mix of people, right? So consultants, we have people who work for vendors, people who work for smaller companies, local companies, authors, people involved with Java user groups, different conferences, training, as well as conferences. Heinz also runs a conference. So I think there's lots of different activities that all of you do and have done to really make yourselves be considered experts or luminaries in the Java community. And that's a question that I often get from developers is, so how do you make that transition, or what was it that helped you make that transition from just doing your regular day job to wanting to take it to the next level and get involved in some of those other types of activities? Getting more involved in the community, either a conference, running a conference, or deciding to go off on your own and doing consulting, or starting a Java user group, or getting involved with Duchess, for instance. So we don't have to all answer this question, but anybody want to share just your personal experience of how that transition happened?
Yeah, I mean, I'll bite at that question, sure.
Okay.
So that sort of career arc of different roles that I had described and covered at a high level, it didn't happen because I was seeking a new role or a new job or a new career. It's sort of like nature. My role evolved over time, and opportunities in nature presents itself, and all of these changes presented themselves. And if you have an aptitude and a passion for something, it makes the transition or the opportunity much easier to embrace and succeed in. And I think a lot of times, all of us, personally, professionally, we try to measure ourselves based on a vertical path. Sometimes the path is also horizontal, just like in nature. And so it's not about reaching a final destination. It's truly a journey. And I know that might sound like lip service, but it truly is. You don't know necessarily where the next opportunity may exist. And that's why it's important to always sort of keep your eyes and ears open, stay connected. And I think we're at a very interesting time where you as developers have control and power for your career. It's not just about a company telling you. You have the chance to interact with the community, find best practices, share information, learn more information, more importantly, learn what you don't know. I find out every day that there's so much that I still have yet to learn. And so if you treat every day as a learning opportunity, especially for your career, those career advancements, whether it's vertical or horizontal, become much easier to see in front of you. Because in your day job, you have blinders on. We all fall into that pattern. We have to focus on the task at hand, the job at hand. But if you really try to rise above that and expand the aperture of what you're viewing the market in, it becomes, your career involvement becomes much easier to address.
Yeah, Mark, you want to speak maybe about your transition? Or?
Yeah, sure. I can lash on to that. So I really see what you're saying with the opportunities. I mean, you can't really plan for what you're going to do in the next few years. I mean, what I personally learned when I started out, at least being involved in communities like the Dutch Java user group, is that it's not so much about if you want to grow your career, sure, you need to learn new techniques, you need to get better at stuff, but that's not really what moves the needle, right? That's not really what makes the difference. We all do that. We all learn new stuff. It's about putting yourself out there, and it could be speaking at a conference, but it could also be very different things like writing for a magazine, blogging, etc. It's really about sort of building your own personality around what you enjoy doing, And that's when the opportunities start arising. And if you can see them, you just grab them and you just try things out. And some things stick, some things don't. I mean, not everybody can be on a stage at a conference, but there are many, many other ways to be involved in the community. Just look at what can happen in open source if you're really active there. I mean, I've seen lots of good stuff happen there as well. So there are many ways to do that, but it's all about putting yourself out there and not just soaking up all information and thinking you're getting better and better and better, because that's just the blindness of the day job. So.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point too about starting small. So for instance, maybe if you wanted to give a talk starting within your local Java user group is great,
sure.
And then maybe
makes a lot of sense.
a local conference beyond the Java user group. And the same thing if you're looking at authoring, right? So you're authoring a book currently, start with an article, contributed article or a blog or social media, and then make the transition to a book rather than just wondering how you're going to start out with your book and take it from there. Mark, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, and Sandra hit it really well. Actually, and actually going back to something Sharat said, this is an excellent time to be a developer, because there is so much breadth and depth in this field that you can grab onto. Whether if you're interested in speaking, that's great. If you're interested in writing, that's great. There's so many avenues, so many outlets that you can pursue. So kick the tires. Check out what makes you tick. Like I said, I like to speak. I also like to write. And there are all kinds of opportunities out there. If you just start with like short little blog posts, just a tech tip, something you found that was helpful. Maybe it's already out there, but it's not in as a consumable format for like your language. Or like Java, maybe there's something that's written, but it's all in Python or whatever. But you feel like you can just have a little snippet out there that may help somebody. It may be a 10-line blog post, and oddly enough, you may get thanks for 3 years down the road, people saying, "My gosh, I'm glad you shared this." It's crazy, because the stuff that sometimes you pour your heart and soul into and think this is awesome, it just nobody notices, and then something you just kind of dash off, somebody pings you later and says, "You don't realize the hours you just saved me," and you think this was nothing. So if there's something that makes you tick, if there's something you enjoy doing, start doing it. And yeah, you're going to stink at it to begin with. When you first started coding, assuming I'm talking to all coders, but when you first started coding, it wasn't really from your fingers did not flow brilliant masterpieces of code. I mean, you had to evolve. You got better, and hopefully you're still getting better every day. Hopefully you look at code you wrote a year ago and you think, "God, what idiot wrote this?" And you say, "Oh, that was me." This is good. This is normal. So try new things. Get out there and see what excites you. I was developing software for a long time, and I started, kind of doing some stuff on the side that was fun, that was exciting to me, that was not in my swim lane at work. But it was something to kind of, it sounds like, oh gosh, that's extra hours working. No, it was extra hours funning. It was something that I wanted to do.
It's a verb, funning.
So yeah, that's my new verb. I'm going to coin that. But it's, it comes from the Kotlin world, of course. Everything's fun in Kotlin. But it was something I wanted to do to unwind. And yeah, sometimes it's stressful when you're trying to solve a problem in a new domain. But it's a good stress, right? It's something you can enjoy and feel, like you've accomplished something. So I did some of this stuff on the side. I started, writing a little bit. I started speaking a little bit. And I was an unofficial advocate for years before I got paid to advocate. And when I came into that role, it was kind of like I said, it was kind of awesome because I got to do stuff that I was already doing, and they paid me for it, which was a huge bonus. So find what makes you tick and, explore different things. If writing is it, that's great. If speaking is it, that's great. If it's something else, contributing to an open source project, working with a local or starting a local user group, or starting to work with kids. The kids are the future. And this is something that, people need mentors. Kids need mentors, people they can look up to that will help them, that you can brainwash in your way of coding. I'm kidding.
No, okay. No, yeah, it's all good, Mark. So, yeah, and you touched on a thing, too, that I think is really important, which is, you touched on communication, right? Communication, right? So he's a communicator, but increasingly, developers need communication skills as well. It is a required skill of the future, even for technical jobs. And so it is a way that you can differentiate yourself, even in your day job, developing some of those softer skills like communication and collaboration, right? increasingly more important even in technical roles. So I think that also tied in with some things that Regina's doing with kids. Did you want to?
Yeah, he's stealing my thunder.
Well, that's
actually.
why I cut him off there.
I queued you up.
It's your time now.
Okay.
Taking my
because
time,
he's-
claiming my time.
We've been talking about speaking, but you can also do less visible things. You think it's less visible, like helping organize an event for kids. We do Devox for kids here in the Netherlands and all over the world. It's we always call Devox now Devox for big kids. It's you will think it's less visible, but companies like it when you are volunteering for it and you get so much back from the kids. They like it. They're just there for a whole day and they learn great stuff and they think, hey, I want to be a developer or not. But at least they've seen what it is. Helping at your local Java user group also helps. That's how I got started. I met Linda. She started Dashes. And that's how I got rolling.
Did you already say what Duchess is?
Dashes is an international Java user group for women. Everybody that's interested in Java and is a woman can join us. There's chapters all over the world. So we're in about 60 countries now.
Cool. I knew that, but I just didn't know if you'd already said it. So I was just for behalf of our audience here that isn't aware, and spread the word. So Heinz, did you have anything to add? I'm sure that you do. I mean, it could be, kind of that transition from when those days 20 years ago when you did have a job.
I can't remember that far back.
Yeah? All right.
No, I think one of the things that helps you to advance in your career, because we're here to advance in careers, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we're trying to do.
Grow our career, advance our career, right. And
so one thing which can grow your career is if you help others. And it doesn't need to be like public, like a Java user group or an article or speaking. It can be just helping your colleague who gets stuck on a programming issue, helping him think through it and solving the problem with him or her, right?
We do have some women here.
Yeah, no, just be inclusive here. So helping others. And if you're too public, it can hurt your career more than you realize. I had a case recently where I recommended someone for a programming job, and he's very smart and very good programmer and everything, and my customer just said no because he's too public. So no, I'm sure he'll just want to do, like business meetings and stuff. He doesn't want to write code. So if you go too public and you write too many articles and you speak in too many conferences and you run too many Java user groups, then you won't get another job as a programmer. Maybe as a manager, but that's boring. So it's not necessarily a bad idea to keep it low key, to sort of help people individually. Maybe to have a study group at your company. So if you, we used to do design pattern study groups where I worked, where we just got together once a week and we studied a design pattern, sort of brown paper bag lunch type of thing. I can put bottles in there as well. It also works nicely.
Yes, okay. So what was it for you then that kind of made that transition for you? What kind of into some other activities beyond the day-to-day coding job?
I don't know if it's that relevant, because one thing which really helped me was to do a certification, actually.
All right.
And the certification is worth negative points on your CV, according to not just my opinion, but a lot of other people who agree with that. Because we've often talked about this in the Java Champion mailing list. We have spoken about it. So what is it worth when people see on your CV, I'm a Oracle certified or Sun certified Java programmer? Well, it normally means that you are so useless that you have to put that at top to at least get some chance of getting a job, right? But in reality, it's one thing which you should do. You don't have to advertise it because...
I was wondering what you were saying, because first you said it was good to do, and then you said it's minus points. But yeah, that's the key. Do it, but don't put it on your CV.
Hide it somewhere on your CV. It's like, I did a word course.
Still have it there, because some jobs here in the Netherlands are looking for a certified people.
Maybe somewhere, but don't put it like don't give it a prominent position, because if I can answer a monkey puzzle, that doesn't mean that I can actually write any code, right? I mean, I've got this reputation as being this brilliant Java programmer, but most people haven't actually seen me program. So, you know, why do they come with this crazy idea that I'm a good programmer if they don't see me program?
Because you're certified?
Well, no, yeah, exactly.
Well, you do live coding in your keynotes sometimes, so.
Yeah, but that's sort of staged, you know.
Is staged, okay. Yeah. Now we know. Now we know the secret.
It's practiced.
You didn't know that's the secret you're going to get today.
So what I'm saying is that in the certification, where it helped me a lot was to explore how Java really works underneath the covers. So I think it's a very good thing to do, but not for your career, for yourself. That's my opinion.
Okay, that you're kind of leading me into my next question. Actually, I was looking. It's not my next one, but it was on my list of questions. So, can you talk about the types of training and personal growth that you've pursued, and how that's benefited your career, whether it's consulting or courses or training? I mean, big thing that's for me has been mentoring. So, I think somebody mentioned mentoring. So, any impact that you've seen there?
I've been on hundreds of Java courses already.
Right.
But I've never attended one as a student so far.
Really?
Yeah.
You never took any training?
Never, no.
Never. You're self-taught.
No,
which is pretty common to be self-taught, but I don't know about never taking a training course. But
well,
that's good. That's one perspective.
No, I just didn't get a chance, because when I started programming, there were very few Java courses around, and I teach Java courses. You know, so yeah, I've actually written more courses than I've taught, because a whole bunch of courses I've written nobody ever wanted to take. It happens too.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let's hear from another panelist.
Well, I will throw in, and kind of to piggyback on what Heinz said, I think there are two mindsets for certification exams. One is to get that credential, and those are the ones you see posting it right up at the top. And the other is to validate or to expand your knowledge. Because I think certification exams are a really good way to poke into the crevices you may not run into on a normal basis. Because the idea is not to quiz people on stuff they use all the time, every day, that's so commonplace you don't think about it. It's to kind of probe those edges. So I think if you use it in that capability, in that perspective, and then list it somewhere, but obviously not, this is the only thing I have, I think it's helpful. I think it does help, flesh out some of those areas. Yeah, and as far as the training and stuff and how you learn, I think everybody learns differently, right? And my wife and I talk about this all the time, because she's very much more of a coursework type of person. I don't do coursework well. I can ingest some of it, but where I really internalize it is when I just grab the virtual tome of information, or in the old days, the actual tome of information, and go through it myself and code and put it into practice. But everybody is different. So once again, find what works for you and leverage that. Don't be afraid, even if, 3 other people sitting next to you at work doing something entirely different, and you're like, that's just not doing it for me. Find what works for you. And coming back to the other thing about how to expand your knowledge, be that person that, the people in your work group say, well, if, go to them, they'll know. And even if you don't know, you'll get a reputation for, well, yeah, I went to Alice, the other week, and she had no idea, but, within 3 days, she had me an answer. She's incredible. If you're that person that people know that they can take an intractable problem to, and you will cut through it, you will see your career expand like you wouldn't believe.
Right. Yeah, that kind of leads into the one that I think has been most beneficial to people I've worked with is the mentoring and coaching. So anybody have anything to add? Regina?
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Even nowadays, I still learn a lot from. Yeah, we have a record. There's helping younger junior developers, mentoring them, and even by code, but also in personal aspects, like maybe you shouldn't do that at work, type of stuff.
Yeah, so a lot of good information here that's been already shared, and to expand on the mentoring concept, it's not just about mentoring others. Mentor yourself. Heather started off the talk by claiming all 5 of us are experts. That's a very dubious term, expert. Expert for how long? My father used to say many a times, you know less than you know. And it's been a mantra I've been, recently learning, last 10 years, maybe 15, that every day is another learning opportunity for yourself. The day you claim you know everything is the day you cease to literally exist. You are no longer valid. Every day is another learning opportunity, and you have to realize that. And whether you learn it yourself, or ask your peers, or seek help, this is the time to do it. I don't think there's ever been a time, at least in the technology industry, where we've reached a point where you as developers have such great influence. Not just yourself, but with each other. So if you choose to internalize it and work locally, talk locally, speak to a peer, address things openly, as Heinz is saying, sometimes that might not be a good thing. You have to make that judgment as far as where and when to do that. But at the end of the day, you have to mentor yourself before you can mentor others. So don't lose sight of that. Try not to lose sight of that.
All right. Okay, did you have anything to add, Sander?
Yeah, I just wanted to say what really helped me, at least in the beginning of my career, is also to try and find within your company a couple of people who are just a couple of steps ahead of you, and just ask questions, right? And not just the academic questions, but also talk about projects they're doing, and why do they make the choices they do, and why do they choose this technology, and what's behind all this. And that's what really helped me to, dive deeper into the aspects of what we're doing. And at some point you might be the one who's the smartest in the room, and then it's also a question of what are you going to do then. It might be a good plan to find the next room then, and find more people who you can learn from. But yeah, definitely try to be mindful of where you are with your knowledge, and try to improve yourself by also just asking your colleagues who are doing some excellent work, I guess. Not sure what's happening here.
Okay, yeah, there's just a little interference there. It's okay. All right. Yeah.
We're doing excellent work. Just try to find out why they make the choices they do, and grow from that. So.
All right. Cool. All right. A couple of you mentioned in the beginning to open source, right? And a lot of times now, when you're at conferences, that's even the question people ask when you're meeting someone. Look at your GitHub profile, right? So, can you talk about the influence that working on open source project has had in your career? And any tips for getting started with that if you haven't been doing that either in your job or in your personal time?
Boy, I've been working on an open source project for 20 plus years now. It's called Java. Heather's right. So one of the beauties of playing with, utilizing open source technology is you're working with a community. It's not just one company, one IP, one thought train in terms of how to get things done. You have millions of colleagues around the world, whether you realize it or not, and that's something you can tap into. And in terms of improving your presence and profile, sometimes we're very afraid to actually ask questions, and on GitHub is a great place to actually validate your ability, or more importantly, sometimes your inability. It's okay not to have the answer. So asking questions is actually a great way to demonstrate that you have interest. That actually spawns conversation, it creates dialogue, and then you become sort of the originator of that question. Because I can almost guarantee other people have similar questions, but if you're courageous enough to ask that, especially in an open source environment, in places like GitHub, it'll spawn a dialogue, and you'll find you have so many more connections to then tap into.
Okay. Mark, you want to add something?
Yeah,
Is it on?
It's not on.
Not yet.
Oh, no, wait.
Okay, we'll use the other one. We can use the other one. Well, yeah.
Okay, really quickly, because this question comes up all the time, and people say, well, how do I get started? Because
Right.
I don't know where to even start.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something that you use that's open source, and you can think of something that, oh, I wish it did this, there's your starting point. But if you can't think of anything, or you're just...
Aren't those lines... I saw you put define all those lines in your YAML file.
Nice.
Really? Okay. That's what they're curious about. It's a gift.
And the heavens opened up. Okay, but the other thing, because not that long ago somebody asked me this, and he said, I just don't know where to start. And I said, well, start with documentation. Because as developers, we so often think about, well, I have to contribute code. I guarantee you, if you go to a project that you like, even if you don't know even what thread to start pulling, if you say, hey, do you need any help with keeping up the documentation? They're going to go, oh my gosh, yes, here. They need help. And how many of us say, oh, the documentation for Project X, that's just too good. It can't possibly get any better than that. There are always areas you go, oh, there's a problem with this doc. So you're grumbling about it and you go on. Why not contribute to that? That gets you started as a committer. There are always, people love to have somebody willing to update the docs in some small or large way. And that gets you on board as a committer with the project. You get to know the people who are committing code. You can start working with them on code. But it's a very easy transition to get started. And again, people are always looking for code committer or documentation committers. So reach out.
Documentation is a good place to start. Also evangelizing social media. Anyone else have any? What? Regina, did you?
This is the
Too many mics. We want to use the other one. Okay.
Yeah,
You don't
sure.
have it. Okay.
So yeah, open source, and people start thinking about what does it mean to work with open source, and yeah, the first thought is, of course, okay, I need to contribute, and that's what you guys are saying, and that's great. But what I really love about open source is the fact that you can read all the code, right? So yeah, what happens often, at least I saw it with lots of coworkers, is that they hit some issue in Hibernate or Spring or whatever, and then they just start treating it like a black box, right? Well, if I tweak this call, it might work, hopefully. And that's not the way to go, right? It's open source, so read the source and see what's happening there. And that's how you, at least how I grew lots of my Java knowledge and general framework knowledge, etc. Read the source. I mean, that's just, I mean, the lowest barrier of entry to open source as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, big payoff, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add about getting started with open source or how it has impacted your career participating in open source projects? Oh, oh yes. Hello. Okay, so sometimes you can Google things first timer, right? That's a great tip. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right, I had just one final topic before we take questions from the audience, and it's, I guess, a little bit unexpected. So it's not unexpected because I did let you know, but any unexpected things that have happened in your career that maybe you didn't know were going to happen and turned out to really be kind of that inflection point for you, or something that you almost didn't take and decided to take, and just kind of share experience, because oftentimes, you know, that helps to have some personal stories to relate to as you make decisions in your career as to what to go next.
That's an interesting question. So I'll try to be courageous enough to address it. So I didn't start this journey as a programmer. That's not where I started. My formal training, my background, my education was in corporate finance and third world economics. I worked at World Bank. We were doing loans to third world countries. Realized very quickly this was the wrong career path. And that's where you have to be courageous and say, is this what I want to do? I just want to show of hands. Hopefully not every hand goes up, but did anyone force you to take the career path that you're on right now? Did you pick this career path because someone made you do it? Absolutely not, right? So what does that mean? It means follow your passion. And that wasn't my passion. And so I was at a precipice in my career. What excited me is just when the mobile market was starting, and I was working at a telco company, and that's when we realized very quickly that going from copper lines to mobile was the future. And I took some certification classes, became sort of self-taught, and then over time increased my skill set such that someone like Heather can call me an expert, even though I'm not. But you don't know where you're going to go. You may think you do, but you don't. It truly is a journey, and you have to ask yourself questions. Am I doing this because I love it, or because I have to do it? It's a very interesting question you should be asking yourselves. And I'm sure there's days where you may think the work this is mundane, this is boring, I hate what I do, I hate my job, I hate my boss, I hate this, I hate that. But there's things you love. You picked this career. So focus on those facets that drew you to this career path, and you'll find that there's diamonds there that can take you to different places.
No one has an unexpected turn. No anecdotes you could share there, Heinz? All right, I'm sure you have something.
So most of my career has been pretty random, like just, hey, let's go to J Spring, let's go to J Fall. I remember seeing all these conferences, but the thing is that very, very often, I think what you said, following your passion, you just sort of, something interests me, like I like Java concurrency, so I start studying that. And then the thing which I find most useful is to move. If you keep on moving, then you can get into different direction. It's like if you take a boat and you're trying to go down a river with the boat, the moment you stop moving forward, you lose control of the boat. And it's the same thing with your career. The moment you stop actually doing something, the moment you switch off and don't study, don't do something, you lose the ability to quickly move it to a different direction. So you need to keep on going forward. Keep on going. Because when you're moving, then you can change directions quickly and easily. And so the thing what happened to me was after I did my PhD, I basically went into like a zombie mode for 2 years, and I got a job for 2 years. And I didn't think for 2 years because I had a job. Right? I would go to work, I'd do my work, and then I'd go home and I'd think about something else because I just was completely burnt out. And then after the 2 years, then I took responsibility for my own life again, and so my learning didn't stop when I finished my coding during the day. In the evening, I would study and I'd try different things. A lot of junior programmers ask me, how do you become an expert? Right, expert. None of us are really experts, but except for Mark. But the rest of us are just.
I just have modest experts on my panel.
Exactly. But my point is, most of us have spent a lot of our personal time, even family time, sacrificed family time, personal time, to get to where we are. There's a lot of traveling involved in what we do, a lot of sacrifices, a lot of personal sacrifices, studying in the evening, and keep on moving forward. You see, if you stop moving, then you're just going to fall behind very quickly. So keep on reading, study, make a resolution that you'll learn at least 1 hour a day. At least 1 hour a day you're going to study something, read something to do with programming or your career or software engineering or something that's interesting that you're going to find useful or maybe useful. And by doing that, you're opening up your mind to possibilities, and then you're going to find different things that you're going to become good at.
Okay, last comment from the panel, and then we've got 10 minutes for questions. Mark, you had something to say? No, I think no. We're going to have questions from the audience. Okay. On that topic.
Well, I'm going to dish on American programmers here because I'm sure this doesn't apply to you at all.
Any American programmers in the audience?
Yeah.
In the audience.
Okay.
Answer the question.
There's sometimes and Heinz kind of touched on this rather delicately, but there is a mindset that sometimes is easy to adopt, where you kind of you may have heard of folks in positions where they say, my company, I can't understand why they don't send me out to training on this. I don't understand why they're not going to pay to train me on this. And yes, a company should invest in their assets, including human beings. But if they don't spite your company by spiting yourself and refusing to learn new things for 10 years or 20 years or 40 years, whatever. You're not hurting them at all. You're hurting you. And yes, in an ideal world, they would pay, they would invest in you, they would grow you as a person, as a professional, as an asset to them. But it's not always an ideal world. So ultimately, that responsibility falls on your shoulder. Even if you are working for a company, treat yourself as an entrepreneur. Treat yourself as a self-paying professional and invest in yourself, because if you don't, you're hurting yourself. So take responsibility for that. Still push for the training. Still push to go to conferences. That's all great, and they should be doing that. But if they don't, and you have to self-fund, what is that worth to you? What can you do? What can you leverage out of that? Ultimately, it's up to you to benefit from that or to suffer if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you do it that way, if you go to conferences and speak there, then maybe you will find a better job than they will pay you to go to conferences.
Oftentimes, that is one of the major advantages to going to conferences is, yes, you will learn about the latest technologies, but even speakers who've been going to conferences for years will often say the best part of it is the networking and the hallway track, getting to know different people that you wouldn't have a chance to meet if you were just staying in the office. Anything else to add, Regina? No? Okay. So I'll take questions from the audience. Yes? Or repeat your questions. Or you're close enough. I can. That way I don't have to repeat it and get it wrong. So, and then I'm gonna take it back. Yeah.
How do you pick which technology to learn? I sometimes make the mistake of reading Hacker News, and it's filled with new technology of the week. Yeah, there's so much stuff to learn. Do you just pick what seems fun, or do you try to find the one that's really going to be used in the future?
All right, thank you. Who wants to answer that? Heinz wants to answer that. Yeah. All right.
So you pick what interests you, and ignore everything else. Well, not everything else, but you can ignore it. The good thing is that that the knowledge in our industry has got a half-life of 3 years. So after 3 years, half of what you know is worthless. Also, like for example, if you don't like Maven, you can just ignore it, and soon Gradle comes along. You know, it disappears. You know, so just focus on. There's enough to learn about stuff that interests you that you're going to have a passion to do that.
Yeah, and learning what you have a passion for makes it more fun, and it also helps you to see the other concepts. So if you learn one thing, then you recognize the concepts in other things. So if you've seen one framework, then another one, then you start seeing patterns in the frameworks anyway. So that helps.
Okay.
So another thing that I always ask myself, does it help me do things that I couldn't do or couldn't do as well before, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense to learn 10 programming languages. I mean, there are many more than that, but so yeah, just pick something that helps you do something fun or something you really want to achieve, and that's sort of my filter. It shouldn't be too similar to what you already know. I mean, that's yeah.
All right. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, you have a question. Wait, all right. I didn't know I was going to get my exercise today. Okay.
I'm curious. You, in some or another forum, all said you have to make some sacrifices. How many of you have kids, and how can you?
Okay, wait. Let's wait. Got it. Okay, we had one answer, but I don't think the mic caught that. Yeah. Not just how many kids do you have, but how do you balance that? Is really the question.
Well, I've got a very, should we say, understanding wife, right? I've got 4 children, ranging from age 4 until 19. Same wife, okay? And
I told you we should have been a comedian.
It's not easy. It's not easy because you have to sort of balance your responsibilities with your learning. But generally, children normally sleep between sort of 1 and 3 in the morning, so there's time.
I will say that, you know, again, it helps to have a good family where you can kind of lean on each other. But I mean, does anybody has gone back to school, gotten an advanced degree while you have a family? I mean, that's a sacrifice as well. I've done that.
A few people.
You know, studying, you're going to have to balance some things. You're going to have to give some things up. But just for instance, I travel a lot. I spend a lot of time on the road, but my kids are older. When my kids were younger, I didn't do much traveling. In fact, I kind of had a 0 travel rule. Not that you can always enforce that, but that was the goal. The goal was 0. So there are different stages in your life that you may adopt or discard certain practices, and that's okay. But don't ever give up on the learning. You know, look for ways that you can sacrifice sensibly, to where you don't miss out on the kids' recitals, where you don't miss out on the things that are truly important. But there are going to be times that you're going to just kind of wall off and do some things that it's tough to balance.
Anybody have any thoughts to share on balance, work-life balance?
Yeah, so I have 3 kids as well, 4, 7, and 9. So it's pretty hectic at times at home. And for the past 1.5 years, I've been working on my book. So yeah, that takes a lot of time. I mean, you can imagine that. But in a sense, I mean, the book's done now, and I really enjoy my additional free time again. And so you watch Netflix again, and et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, those are the sort of the things that you're trading off, right? I'm not trading off time with my kids. I'm trading off my sort of leisure time in the evenings, and well, maybe sometimes in the weekends as well, when the deadline for the book got closer, etc. But it's not as if I'm shutting down everything and just focusing on work. So yeah, and it's not always easy to make the balance. So to be completely honest, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I only have 2 kids. You guys are, you both are overachievers. So, but you know, my kids are relatively young. Sure, I'm happy to take one.
That's how you balance.
That's how you balance.
Rely on the community.
So they're relatively young, 10 and 13, and yes, it is a sacrifice to be away from home. But when I said you should invest in yourself and mentor yourself, that's inclusive of what I consider your family. Mentor your family, and so because they're so young, children nowadays are easily gravitating towards technology. So I find myself having common threads with both my son and daughter on what it is that I love. They're sponges about wanting to know more about technology, how to program. I mean, my daughter's doing Scratch. My son is, playing with his Lego Evos, and any opportunity I have to pass on some, fundamental, best practices that they can understand, it gives me a chance to interact with them, where it's not just learning. That's our fun time. Funning. I was funning.
Funning here.
I was funning.
Did you have a question in the back? Someone had a question, I think. Yeah? Okay, question in the back. All right. Don't worry, I'll come to you. Don't worry, don't get up. I'm stumbling across all these people.
So, it's also regarding balance. How do you balance between doing things? These days, the technologies are moving further so quickly. New changes, new developments. So you have to get up to speed with them, but also do the presentations, do talks, and all this stuff. How do you balance them?
All right. And you have a question also, right? Did you raise your hand? I'm going to come back. Just checking. Just using the time wisely. You have to be efficient. That's my tip. Okay. Who wants to take that one? What? Sure, yeah, if you have something.
So I'll answer on behalf of somebody else, which is Maurice Naftalin. You know Maurice?
Yes, of course, I do.
So everybody knows Maurice Naftalin. So Maurice Naftalin and I, we were asking ourselves, why do we go give these talks at conferences? Because they don't pay, right? If you're lucky, they pay your travel. So why do we do it? And the reason he came up with eventually was it forces us to explore topics we otherwise wouldn't explore. To figure out stuff. So a lot of the time when I'm preparing a talk, I'm going to delve into something far more detailed than I would otherwise spend on it. So it's actually to my benefit to do that.
I mean, you're asking a very good fundamental question, but going back to something we covered earlier, I think for the most part, we're all doing this because we have a passion for it, right? And as we learn in nature, things evolve and they move forward and they evolve faster, just like in technology. If you have a passion for it, I don't consider it a burden or work. There's trade-offs you make, obviously, but at the same time, it's not. I'm not dragging this anchor, thinking that I'm going to be inefficient in some way if I don't achieve a certain level of aptitude. Learn as much as you can and pace yourself. You have to really think about this. Like, am I trying to become an expert, or do I want to be a generalist, or do I want to have just domain understanding? There's various layers that you can embrace and adopt and learn from, because again, going back to what we said, every day less than you know. Every day is a learning opportunity. Treat it that way and absorb as much as you can, but don't overburden yourself. Try not to do that, because if you do that, then it becomes a situation where, well, I've failed. I haven't achieved what I set out for. Don't focus on the achievement. focus on the learning process.
All right, yeah, you have a question? Okay. Okay, just a minute, because yeah, not everyone can hear you. Okay.
So hi, thanks a lot. To what you mentioned, Sarah, actually, there is a bridge, I believe, to your last words. Sometimes you don't even know where you're gonna go. You just go with the flow, that's it.
Okay, he needs the mic. We started out with so many mics. I didn't know. Okay, last comment. Too many mics. Now not enough.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you can go with the flow, but you don't want the flow controlling you. Hein said that, which is, if you don't steer your boat in some way, shape, or form, sometimes you may not go necessarily in the direction you desire to go to. So you want to still have some level of influence as you go on this journey, and that's okay, right? Sometimes, sure, let it ride, but at the end of the day, you have to apply some control in directing yourself where it is that you want to, the attainment that you desire and seek. Now, you may not get there, and that's okay. I think that's the more important part is, don't look at it as a linear A and B. It's not about just arriving to B and then saying I'm done. Or you may go on that journey to B and find out you're going to X, Y, and Z instead. So in that case, yes, go with the flow. I agree with you, but apply some self-control to it as well. Because if you don't, then you'll get into this mindset of, well, why am I doing this? Never lose sight that you're doing this because you're passionate about it. Let your passion guide you.
All right. Well, I think we're out of time now. But if anyone else wanted to add any last thoughts to that last question, I just don't have any time for questions because we'd be conscious of our panelists' time as well as our attendees. So the party is what I'm keeping you all from. So you want to add something? Well, pass the mic, please. What was the mic? No? All right. Well, thanks to all of you for coming. I hope something that the panelists said inspired you to expand and grow on your career, advance your career as a developer. And thanks to our panelists, expert luminaries, whatever word you want to call it, in air quotes. Appreciate sharing your time and your insights today. Really interesting discussion. So thanks for that. And I'll see the rest of you all at the party, I guess. We're going to party now, right? J-Fall's over. Great way to close out the conference. Think about, how to move forward the next step with your career. Thank you. All right.